There's no such thing as a linear life. That's it. I think we're taught from the minute we're born is you got to figure out how your life's going to go. In third grade, they start asking us what we want to be when we grow up, or they start telling us what we should be when we grow up. And the second there's a bump in the road, we think that's the end of our life, especially women. And we get extremely insecure. There's no such thing as a linear life.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, here. I'm so excited to share this story with you. And this is one that I've been trying to make happen. Heck, we've been trying to make happen for years, like since the beginning of One Girl Revolution. And it finally happened. And I'm so honored and so excited to share this one with you. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, we welcome Kristina Rinaldi, Executive Director of Detroit Dog Rescue. Detroit Dog Rescue is a nonprofit organization and is Detroit's first no-kill dog shelter. Detroit Dog Rescue was founded in 2011 and is known for taking in Detroit's dogs and investing the time and training needed to rehome them. DDR focuses on raising awareness of the mounting homeless and stray dog epidemic in Detroit, along with advocating for humane rescue alternatives such as no-kill sheltering, foster care and adoptions, pet identification, and healthy pet population control through spay and neutering. Detroit Dog Rescue also specializes in community outreach, and they work closely with local, city, and statewide organizations in order to educate and involve people in this cause. DDR is such an incredible organization, and you're going to love getting to know them, and I hope that you'll follow them on social media. And Kristina herself is absolutely incredible. In this episode, Kristina shares how DDR was founded and then how she ended up taking the reins to lead it to where it is now and where it's going. She also shares exciting breaking news. We love an exclusive about what DDR has coming up. Kristina also shares her own life story, which I've never heard, and she shares some difficult things that she experienced as a child and how she overcame it all to be the powerful and inspiring force she is in the world today. You'll also hear about DDR's pig, yes, pigs, and so much more. And there is a little special guest, actually a little special guest and a big special guest. My dogs, Eddie and Maggie, make a special appearance as well, which seems fitting for DDR. You do not want to miss this incredible and inspiring episode. Here's my conversation with Kristina. Kristina, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Finally, I feel like we have been planning this for years.
It has been years, but like I said to you before, I don't believe in coincidences. So this is obviously the time, but I feel like since I started One Girl Revolution, you and I have emailed back and forth, and then like different times it just didn't work out. I know in the winters you get so busy.
Yeah.
So I think one of the winters it like just didn't work out, but I'm happy to have you here now.
Yeah, I feel like we've always been like doing parallel things. I've been watching you, you've been watching me. So we knew we were there and we were like, I'll catch you on the flip side. And
yeah.
So I'm happy. I'm grateful that we're doing this today.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on to talk all about Detroit Dog Rescue and all the great work that you're doing. But before we get into that, I would love to rewind and hear a little bit about your own story, your own journey, who you are and where you're from.
Yeah. I love that. So Detroit Dog Rescue obviously started in 2010, became a nonprofit in 2011. A lot of people don't know it started as a failed reality show. Discovery Channel wanted to see how dogs were surviving in an urban environment. Now you're talking about rewinding all the way back to Detroit 2010. We've come a long way in 14, 15 years. Back then you would drive around in the neighborhoods and there would be, and there still is blight, but there would be so much more blight and dogs just living in these houses. And we were going through a foreclosure crisis. The big three, the car companies, they weren't doing so well. People were getting up and leaving their homes. So Discovery Channel wanted to see how these dogs who were being left behind in homes and breeding were surviving. It looked like a jungle here, just kind of left behind. And they started with a show with a friend of mine who was a prominent rapper in Detroit. And they called him up and said, hey, can you show us around? And so him, myself, a couple other friends, just started showing Discovery Channel around, started seeing these stray dogs. And pretty soon Mayor Bing, who we know and love, was like, are you crazy? You're going to show this on the Discovery Channel and make Detroit look even worse than it is. And I was 25, 26 at the time. Looking back as a more mature adult, I understand Mayor Bing. I get where you're coming from in the political gang. But he shut it down. He took the filming permits. Discovery Channel went back to California. And everybody here was just like, wow, we have been following these dogs, seeing their stories. No joke, Dante DeSaro was going out at midnight, following these dogs and knowing their stories. And if you don't know Dante, check out Detroit City Distillery. He's over there all the time now, following these dogs. And we all were just like, we can't leave them like this. At the time, Michigan Humane had like an 80% euthanasia rate. Detroit Animal Control was killing 99% of the dogs that came in. So they got on the news and we all said, we're starting a no-kill shelter. Looking back almost 15 years, I was like, what? That is crazy, but also so cool. People started donating online, and that was just like from a story on Fox 2. It got on MSNBC. It went national. Eventually, a woman in Coronado, California, who was passing away, gifted Detroit Dog Rescue $1.5 million to start a no-kill shelter in the city of Detroit. So here we are, and, that's history. But that's how it started. So I always say, if you have a dream, go for it. And you never know. You can't plan everything. And like you and I say, what's meant to be will be.
Yeah. And sometimes when you see something, you just can't unsee it and you have to make a difference. And sometimes we all are like, we talk ourselves out of doing something. And I'm sure there are moments when you guys were like, oh, we don't have the money. We don't have the time. 100%. We can't do it. The need is so big in the city of Detroit and even still today. But looking back then, I'm sure there were times when you were like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if I can even help any of these dogs because there's so many.
That is a great point. I think my whole life up until then, and talk about coincidence, there's no such thing as a coincidence and everything is fate. My whole life up until then was like, I don't think I can do it. I came from basically having no parents. My mom, I don't know where she is to this day, had a lot of, mental health issues, and I was abused in her home by her and her husband, and, any kind of abuse that you can think of, I went through it. Eventually, the court took me away, handed over custody to my dad, who was in and out. And then what ended up happening is one of his girlfriends ended up raising me, and I stayed with her until I was like 18. And so I didn't have like your typical upbringing. I was kicked out of college because I couldn't afford rent in the dorm and all those things, and worked in music in Detroit, worked in music studios, like ghostwriting and writing 16 bars for $400 here and there, and bartending and doing all of the things while working on what back then, 2002, 2003, Detroit was just booming with music and people that, Marshall Eminem had made it, and everyone was searching for the next record deal. So, and that's how I met everyone. I'd known him for years that was, involved with Detroit Dog Rescue. So I think I could have, or you can try and plan your life and plan, and like, it's going to go this way. And that's why I always tell everyone, like, there's no such thing as a linear life. I think I could have tried and planned and done, but what was meant to be was meant to be. And here we are.
Do you think that there are, or do you see elements of your childhood and things that you've gone through in your own life in the work that you're doing today? I'm like a firm believer in thinking back sometimes that even the most horrific things that we go through, and I'm sure even up there.
No, this is perfect. Keep working. This is like, I feel like we have a studio audience.
Eddie and Maggie. I knew one of them was going to break.
They're our co-hosts, Maggie and Eddie. If you could see them, we have to get video for.
I know for
mm-hmm.
for sure. But they're a little co-hosts for Detroit Dog Rescue.
I love it.
But I'm sure that you're seeing so many difficult things every single day. You're seeing trauma that these dogs have been through. Do you see yourself or some of your own journey reflected in that?
Oh, yeah. And so now that I'm 41, for everybody who wants to picture that. And I've been doing like weekly therapy for the last 5-6 years. And what has become so conscious to me is so beautiful, and I love it. And now I'm fully able to put the pieces together. But I can also see how back when I was 25, why I never gave up on this. There was a point where Detroit Dog Rescue was bankrupt. And I was like, I'm not leaving these dogs. They don't have a voice. They don't have anybody. Michigan Humane is killing 80% of dogs. DAC is killing all the dogs. I can't let them down, and I can't let the residents down. So what I went through definitely like gave me my fight, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm not saying I loved what I had to go through, but you know, I think there's pain in everything that's beautiful, and you have to go through things to come out the other side. And no, I don't tell a friend who's having a hard time or going through a breakup or what, well, you know, it'll be better on the other side. But I think once you are able to reflect at the right time in your life, you say, oh, I get it now. I get why I went through that. So this whole organization and everything of the last 15 years has definitely brought it. It brings it full circle. Most days. Most days I'm like, geez, could I just have a normal life?
Yeah.
But what is that anyway? So
yeah. Well, and I think also you've come so far. Detroit Dog Rescue has come so far.
Yeah.
And even myself, like with what I've experienced with One Girl Revolution, it's like, all right, I can't just like shut the door. I need I need to keep going. And I'm sure that there were also moments throughout this journey, and every day you're still experiencing that sometimes, where it's like, all right, I've come so far. I've seen all these like great stories come to fruition. And even on the most difficult days, sometimes I just got to put one foot in front of the other. And I know that there's a need. There's such a dire need for what you're doing.
100. I mean, I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's everybody I think you look at everybody's Instagram and you're like, they have the best life. You know,
right.
Everybody looks at my Instagram and they're like, and I get the messages like, you're living my dream. I want to do what you do. Can I shadow you for a day? And like what you don't see are like the hundreds of thousands of dollars in vet bills. You got to keep the lights on. You got to keep the water running. Right now we're going through a staff shortage, a volunteer shortage. And you know, my husband and I, our date night was we went to the shelter on Saturday and, you know, washed dishes, and he was fixing a broken kennel. Like, that's date night for us. There is no really, you know, we'll go to a restaurant to get carry out, to take it to the shelter to do work. So it's, there's also a whole nother side of it. But absolutely, I look at it, you know, as he's fixing a kennel on Saturday, like, there is that side of, I am so lucky. Look how far we've come. We have so much more. We're growing. But it's definitely not like we're sitting back, and, you know, you have to work hard for it to come to fruition, and like anything else.
Yeah. And there's so much work to be done, you know, and there's so many more dogs. And I love following everything that you have going on Instagram. And I encourage everybody who's listening, we'll say it again at the end, but for people to follow what you're doing and do whatever they can to donate, to volunteer. I know you're always looking for fosters.
Absolutely.
You're always looking for volunteers, like you said, and now hiring. So yeah. There's so many different ways that people can get involved in the work that you're doing. And I know that Detroit Dog Rescue has grown and evolved so much since its beginning. Can you talk a little bit about that? When you first started, what was that kind of like in those early days? And then what's it like now?
Yeah. You know, what's funny is like every time we get past one hump, there's of course like another hump. But the early days, like we had no money. Let's see, my daughter's about to be 10. When the first shelter, the original shelter was built and we opened the door, she was 6 weeks old. Wow. So like, I remember being so pregnant and like painting the shelter. I remember having a brand new baby. Like I tell everybody now, I missed like so many of her first years and first things and first words and her talking first, because we didn't have anyone to work for us. And I love volunteers. They're great. But the amount of accountability for some people isn't there. So there'd be a snowstorm. And I get it. People are like, I can't get out of my driveway. I can't come down to the shelter. But you have living beings in the shelter that need to be fed, that need to go to the bathroom. So it was like my husband and I are trying to get down to the shelter in the middle of a snowstorm and do all the things ourselves. And like, I remember cleaning the whole shelter by myself. So I'm definitely lucky to have a crew now. And we're a little bit more comfortable. That's always helpful, but we're growing. So we have the shelter now, and we're building a spay and neuter clinic on the east side of Detroit. So we don't have enough hands. So I'm like the one going down there and meeting with the people. So we're always going to grow. You know, you're always going to have growing pains, but to see how people have come out and helped, to see what it's changed. I mean, I'm definitely not going to take credit for what the city of Detroit has helped with or done. But before Detroit Dog Rescue was making all this noise and was on the news and on national news, animal control was killing all of the animals they got their hands on. There was no credit card system. If your dog was picked up by Detroit Animal Control and you were like, hey, it's Sunday, I have $500 cash, I'm trying to get my dog out of quotation marks impoundment, like or you said all I have is my credit card, they're not giving you your dog, and they're killing it when it's, that 3 days is up, if they hold it for the 3 days. There was no medicine. When DAC finally changed directors, when I got them to change from their old director 5 directors ago in 2014, 15, we went in that building when Melissa Miller, God love her, there were rusty needles. There was no medicine. There was no way to take care of these dogs. There was no budget. People were behind getting paid. There was livestock next to dogs. There were dead dogs. There was a dead dog in a wheelbarrow who had been killed with a shovel. There was a puppy that was fed to a snake. I mean, like, the house of horrors was what was happening. And had Detroit Dog Rescue not made as much noise, and I pushed the city for an agreement to release dogs to rescues, there would be no new animal control coming. There would be no new director there. There would be no volunteer program there. Detroit Dog Rescue, of course, with the help of some other rescues, but we were, and I'll take credit where credit is due, we were absolutely the catalyst for this since 2010. Before this, it wasn't getting blasted on the news. The secrets weren't coming out. Nobody was FOIAing anything. I mean, we went hard for the changes that are coming to fruition today. And I know, God love him, Mayor Duggan will never give credit for that. And I get the game of politics, and you can take this out or leave it in, whatever you want. I love some changes that he's made, but I know that Detroit Dog Rescue was the catalyst for that. And I've worked with him and the whole team, and I just did a tour of the new Detroit Animal Control that's coming, and I'm so excited for that. And there'll be more ways to partner, but to see what we've been able to do is incredible. Sometimes it's the spark that makes the fire.
Yeah,
I'm cool with that.
You've done such incredible work, and your team has, and even I've watched as you guys have continued to grow and evolve. And even in the city of Detroit, it is cool from my perspective to see these other dog rescues popping up and like trying to support one another and like working together to save as many dogs as possible, because it is heartbreaking when you're driving around. I know my sister tells me horror stories because she lives in the city of Detroit and drives to Livonia, and she's like, I've seen dogs running down I-75. I've seen dead dogs on the side. Like, it's just heartbreaking that people are driving and I'm sure you have all kinds of stories,
100%.
Everything under the sun, where it's like people got a dog during COVID and then decided they didn't want the puppy anymore because it became an adult dog and just dropped it off somewhere. Or these poor dogs, their owner dies and then nobody steps in to take care of them. I mean, there's so many different stories like that, and people don't think about it. People think like, oh yeah, there's like only pit bulls are in Detroit. No. It's like, no, all different types of stories.
Eddie is agreeing. He's like, there are all kinds of dogs around here. He's like, yeah, Mom, tell him. Absolutely. And you know what I'm going to tell you? What I love is, I love the good rescues popping up. Always know who you're supporting.
Yes. Great caveat. Great caveat.
Some people, after DDR got that $1 million donation, 25 nonprofit rescues for animals popped up. It's the mailman.
Yeah.
It's the mailman. Quick commercial break from Eddie announcing the U.S. Mail Department. 25 rescues popped up after we got our $1 million donation.
Oh, interesting.
And everyone was just like, "Ooh, I can get on the news. This is how it's done. And I'm going to get rich." And what we found were like rescues that would just pile dogs in houses. One rescue apparently had like a cheap rental home. Like basically they just bought the home when houses were really cheap, and they were storing dogs in there. They stored 5 dogs in the house. The house caught on fire. All the dogs died. So this is like, and I also get a lot of calls to rescues. And every story can look great on Instagram, but just, know who you're supporting. But I love that there are compassionate people popping up, working together. We supply food and resources. Like, if we get too much food from a distributor, we're always sharing with Detroit Animal Control or other rescues. I love that. I love people working together for the animals, because there is enough work here for everybody. Like you said, your sister sees it going to Livonia every day, and there's more than enough work. we stepped in last summer. Detroit Animal Control called me about a pig that was stuck in a backyard. And I was like, this is not happening. We can't bring a pig to the shelter, guys. And unfortunately, the pig's life, because Michigan Humane was full and everybody is full, the pig's life was not going to be a happy ending. And I hung up the phone and then I called back and was like, just bring me the pig. So the pig is on a farm living his best life. My kids visit often. So everybody's working together to save everything in Detroit.
I'm glad that you brought up the pig, because I was actually going to ask you about it, because anybody that knows me knows that I love pigs.
You're a pig person?
I'm obsessed with pigs. And so when I saw that you guys adopted the pig, every time the pig shows up on your Instagram, I of course love everything about it.
Okay. So we get a call from Detroit Animal Control and they're like, Kristina, we got a pig. And they know my daughter rides horses. So I know a lot of farm stuff and communities. And they said, this pig is in a backyard. It was abandoned. And I was like, can we bring a pig to your shelter? And I was like, no, you cannot bring a pig to my shelter. Like, the dogs will go crazy. And I said, what's going to happen to the pig? And the pig, not to be graphic, was going to meet a very sad death. And so I hung up the phone knowing that I probably couldn't help this pig. But as we talk about, you don't live a linear life. And if you can help where you can, you should. And I called it back and I said, bring me the pig. Bring it to this farm and, we'll figure out what we're going to do with the pig. We'll get it adopted out. And next day, 2 police cruisers from Detroit show up out in a rural area of Michigan with a very angry pig in the back seat. And it took them a little while to calm down, but Pigs is now pretty much part of the Rinaldi family. My daughters take care of him and he's living his best life. And, he needed some surgery. We got him surgery and he learned what a vegetable is because he lived off white bread for the first 2 years of his life. And probably was fed beer because he's always trying to get into beer and all kinds of things when he smells it or sees it. He's a pretty darn gangster pig, but his name is Pigs and he's living his best life. So we just try to help where we can. Like every rescue.
Oh, well, I love following pigs and everything you have going on there. If you are enjoying this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, please subscribe today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. We have new inspiring episodes coming out every week, and you don't want to miss a single one. Subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast today. So Detroit Dog Rescue, everybody who's listening, they kind of know from the name what Detroit Dog Rescue is. But for somebody that doesn't know or isn't familiar with the work that you're doing, what is Detroit Dog Rescue? And tell me about all the facets of the work that you do.
Okay, so for those who don't know, and there are actually a lot of more people than you think who don't know what DDR is. I think around here everyone's like, oh, you don't know DDR. And Detroit Dog Rescue is Detroit's first no-kill shelter in the city of Detroit. That's what we set out to start. That's who we are. We'll always be the first. We started off in a shelter on Harper Avenue on the east side because nobody wanted to zone us. So we were a little 2,000 square foot shelter. And then Westcott Veterinary Center called us. They had 11 locations. They wanted to off-card their west side location. So we just moved into an 11,000 square foot new shelter on the west side of Detroit. So we're Detroit's first no-kill shelter. What we do is we rescue, rehab, adopt, and provide alternatives to euthanasia. So we also have an outreach program. We do vet clinics. We do vaccine clinics. We're building a pet pantry and a spay and neuter clinic. You can call us if you've lost your job and you just need your dog to get vaccinated, a license, and pet food. I much rather would keep your dog in your home than take it from you. So all the alternatives to euthanasia. So if you can retain your dog, great. If we need to help you with your dog through training or intaking your dog for rehab and adoption, we'll try and help you with that. So our save rate is 96.3%. Of course, here, which in Detroit is amazing. No kill means you save 90% of more of what you take in. So we're at 96.3%. I don't think people realize that. I think people realize no kill is you never kill. And if we could touch on that for a second, it's not what it means. We see some of the worst cases. One is we did an FBI raid. We took a dog out of there who was fed gunpowder, who was fed horrible things. This dog would never be fit for the public. He would have killed somebody. Unfortunately, we, had to euthanize him, and he'll always live in my heart. But it means we take in treatable animals and we rescue 90% of them. So there are a few euthanasias that unfortunately we do have to do for public safety. And honestly, it's not just public safety. It's the life of that dog. There are dogs that are suffering. What I don't like about this side of Instagram is people will sensationalize pain, abuse, and suffering. And I see this on a lot of animal accounts. You know, we had a dog in who had like a broken back, broken everything. And the rehab that this dog would have had to go through and the pain it would have had for the rest of its life, like that's not humane. So putting that on Instagram and just dragging it out for donations, that's not humane. But we can get into that on another episode. But so that's what no kill means. And we're the first no kill shelter in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, well, I love following everything that you guys do, and I encourage everybody to follow because you have so many positive stories, right? Like I love when you see these animals get rehabbed and then get placed with a family, a forever family. And then it's important for us to see the rough parts of it too,
100%.
The sad things, because we need to know that there is evil in the world. There is badness in the world. And sometimes I'll see a story that you guys post and I'm like, I can't believe that somebody did that to this animal. Yeah. And we can all be a part of the change too. I think it's important to mention that, you know, we all have neighbors, we all have people in our lives, family members, and you might see something or know something's going on and we all can do something to say, hey, I noticed that this is happening. Maybe you should, can I take the dog off your hands or something? If a dog is being neglected or there's abuse going on or something. Not that we want to be calling on our neighbors, but I know you've also had
a hard conversation.
Yeah.
That's a hard conversation. I get people that call me all the time like they don't know, and I say this in the nicest way, they're not equipped to have that conversation. Yeah. You know, with your neighbors. And there's a lot of different dynamics in the city of Detroit and beyond. And I will say, you know, when you ask who Detroit Dog Rescue is, of course my candid answer is we're the first no-kill shelter in the city of Detroit. If you were asking me what keeps Detroit residents and people of all walks of life coming back to DDR is, I think it's because we are a dog rescue with a heavy focus on people. So of course we want to say there's evil in this world, which there certainly is. And there's bad people who do bad things to animals in this world. And one thing I always say in training is if your dog is giving you a hard time, it's because they're having a hard time. That's very true with people too. If a person is giving their dog a hard time or even another person a hard time, they're having a hard time. Quick example. I was called to a house where 3 dogs were outside in a horrible snowstorm. They had dog houses, they had straw, they had everything. And people, the whole neighborhood, people that didn't live in the neighborhood were messaging me and calling me. So I go to this house, what's going on? I knock on the door and guy opens the door and automatically I notice like right inside the door, there's a stack of Isley Brothers records. And I just remember being like, oh, do you like the Isley Brothers? And he's like, yeah. And so we start talking about the Isley Brothers. And he's like, oh, come here. I'm like, I want to show you this record. So I go in his house and I noticed his house is freezing. He's got like a 13-year-old daughter and like a 4-year-old toddler. And I'm like, wow, it's cold in here. And I'm like, so you have your dogs outside? And he's like, yeah, it's because we don't have any heat in the house right now. So we're actually like the dogs are warmer in their dog houses in the garage because we don't have heat in here. We've all been sleeping in the living room with a space heater. And I opened the oven and turned the oven on to heat up the house right now. Holy like smokes.
Yeah.
So like everyone's concerned about those dogs, me too. And nobody has been concerned about why, like what's the cause? Why are the people doing it? So we ended up calling Thaw, getting the heat turned on in the house. We immediately went and bought space heaters and groceries and things like that. And guess what? Like once the people were able to get straight, the dogs were straight.
Yeah.
So you can't be a good dog owner. Maybe you can't be a good parent, friend, neighbor when you don't have basic resources for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think to people in Detroit, just moving to Detroit, maybe you're not from Detroit, like you can't even imagine that sometimes. And so not you, but just like general public, it's hard to imagine. Like most of my volunteers are like, when I explain this to them, they were like, oh my gosh, like I realize I've never like been hungry in my life. I've never gone without heat. If my shoes get muddy, I just go buy new ones. Mm-hmm. So you can't, and that's where it comes in. Like, I'm so grateful for my life. Cause like I was sleeping on a foam mattress in an empty house at one point in my life. Like I do think about those things. And so I do think about like, oh, I get it. You don't have basic needs, so you can't take care of. I know what that feels like. So let's get that's the root of the problem, not the dogs outside.
Right.
How can we fix that so you can fix the rest of your stuff? So, and so we talk about a heavy focus on people, and those same people, they come back, they get involved, they trust us. I see so many, and I'm trying to say this in the nicest way, rescues from the suburbs, good intentioned people from the suburbs knock on doors of Detroiters and saying, why is your dog outside? You need to spay and neuter your dog. Like, there's some people in Detroit and outside of Detroit that can't afford a hot and ready to feed 4 of their kids. Like, they're not even thinking about the cost of spay and neutering right now. So I always say, and actually Mayor Duggan, I'm gonna give you credit, Mayor Mike. First time I ever complained to him, I was a young 20-something, sat in his office above the river, and I just complained, like, you're not doing this for animal control, you're not doing this. And he said, okay, what's the solution? And I was like 26 or something, I don't know. I shut up real quick, and I was like, I haven't really thought of that yet. Let me get back to you. So I tell everybody, unless you're willing to come with a solution, you can't bark orders. And that was one thing that came of that meeting with Mayor Duggan, is now I'm always solution based. If we're going to complain about that dog in the doghouse, are we prepared to fix the whole entire problem? So.
Well, and that's a big part of this podcast too, Kristina, is we all can be a part of the solution.
Yes.
And, it's so easy to pick up your phone and call and complain because somebody's dog is left outside. But who knows, like you said, what the real story is. And so I encourage everybody who's listening, find out, knock on the door
100%.
And say, hey, I noticed that. Is there something I can do? If you're, leaving your dog out because you're at work or something, can I be letting your dog in and out? We all can do something. We all can do a little bit more, right?
And
you don't have to.
And once you volunteer with us, you learn this stuff. We have crucial conversations and things like that, and you get to carry it. If you volunteer at Detroit Dog Rescue for 4 months and never come back, just because you're busy, you carry that kind of stuff with you your whole life. So it take it out of the dog context, right?
Yeah.
You're mad at your brother because, I don't know, he didn't give you a Christmas card. Instead of being like, F my brother, his wife never sends me Christmas cards. Let me ask the question first of is something going on this year, guys? Are the kids too much for you? Can I help you?
Yeah.
Your neighbor who you don't talk to, but they never take in the mail and their mailbox is overflowing. You're pissed. My homeowners association isn't doing anything, Knock on the door hey, I brought your mail in, everything. Oh my God, you broke both of your legs? And that's why I'm so sorry I didn't help sooner. So we always just jump to conclusions. You're evil. You don't take care of your dogs. You hate people. When a lot of people, and listen, there is evil out there. I've sat in court cases. Okay, I'm not sticking up for anyone abusing their dog.
But
sometimes there's a reason. And when you don't have the basic needs to take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So. And if there is evil, I will sit in the court case.
Yes,
you
will.
I will. But,
Kristina, I know there are so many stories, right? That you could just probably write books and books and books on all of the different experiences you've had, all the different dogs that you've met throughout the years. But is there a story or two of a dog, or maybe even a person, because you're also dealing with a lot of people, or it could be both and, that just kind of touched your heart in a special way, that just reiterates why the work that you're doing is so critical and so important?
Yeah, there's I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. There's a dog named Champ, and he was like a shepherd mix. It was white and brindle shepherd mix. A Detroit narcotics officer called my cell phone crying and said they just did a narcotics raid. This was the drug dealer's dog. They busted in the side door, drugged it. There was it was narcotics, and there was also some element of kidnapping. I think the drug dealer had his cousin's daughter, some element of kidnapping. I didn't get all of the details. The bad guy was, in lame terms, the bad guy was running out the back door with the baby, with the little girl. Champ came. Cops busted in the door, of course, most dogs would do, went after the officers while the guy is getting away. They had no choice but to shoot the dog. So it's you either let the drug dealer get away with the baby or you shoot the dog. Officer went for the quote unquote safest place to shoot the dog, back leg. What ended up happening is when Champ was jumping towards him, hit his hip, blew his hip and his back leg apart when he shot that dog. And I know this is graphic for some people to listen to. It's got a happy ending. Calls me crying like, Kristina, like, we had to do it. You have to save this dog. Like, please, please. There's no resources in Detroit Police Department, like, once you shoot a dog. And this is close to 6, 7, 8 years ago. I go, I get the dog, I rush him to emergency services. This dog's hip is like blown apart, his leg's blown apart, and I just say to the vets, like, they always let me back into surgery. I'm like, you guys got to save this dog. And they're like, Kristina, this is like easily $10,000. This is so stupid. Like, this dog should be euthanized. And I get their medical opinion. I said, we can't euthanize this dog. They're like, an officer feels horrible about this. This guy risked his life today. Also, this is not this dog's fault. Save this dog. I don't care what it costs. I'll find you the money. Save this dog. So they took the bullets out of his hip, reconstructed his hip. His leg's all good. They saved the leg, which I was actually shocked. Went above and beyond. This dog ends up costing like $12,000, $13,000 back then. They saved the dog. The officer was just so grateful, so happy. But the vets also learned, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe like that you did this. Nowadays, I think it's more common. Well, you'll see things on Instagram that are like, this dog's vet bill is $20,000. Back then, this was like crazy. You're being crazy, Kristina. And they all learned like, wow, we can really do this. I mean, this was like an intricate surgery to save Champ. Champ ends up being taken out of the guy's custody, gets adopted to this great couple that still has I'll have to give you his Instagram name. Champ climbs mountains, goes to Seattle, goes to Colorado, wears his little vest, like goes on the best walks. Champ's living a better life than I am and was worth every bit of the $10,000 that people came together and donated for him to live. So you have Detroit police who know they have backup and can trust somebody. You have the officer who feels so much better about what he had to do to save a little girl. And you have a dog who was put in a bad situation who now is living a way better life. So it's, you're all around, circle. And you have the vet team learning what we can all do together. And myself of like, if you just do the right thing and what you feel is right in your heart, it's all going to work out from every angle. And I still live like that. And that's because dogs taught me that. I didn't get that from my upbringing or my story. Dogs taught me that. So that's why I keep going.
What a great story. Yeah, you'll have to give me the Instagram so I can put it in the show notes for sure. So everybody
like an influencer. I'm like, hey. So.
And that must be great. That must be so great for you to see and your team to see too, because you're dealing with every single day. You're dealing with some really rough stories and really rough situations. And even in that situation to have that dog come through it and just be living its best life, with its new family.
Absolutely. It takes, it's so funny. Like so many people call me crazy and even my team was like, you're a little bit crazy. And I'm very, I don't want to say like impulsive in a bad way, but I'm like, that can be done. Like there's somehow everything can be done. And anything that goes bad, if you sit on it and you're like, oh, that went bad. And you just, dwindle on that, great. Or you can just reverse engineer your brain to we're going to fix this. And I have some really great people, Kristen, Bridget, Jules, that are all on my team now who have worked with me long enough that they have that same mentality. So they're almost to the point where like nothing phases us, we'll fix it. But like the new team that comes in, it's a hard job. You see hard things, and even the vet teams that work with us, you see really sad stuff. But to know that we create the type of culture within inside Detroit Dog Rescue of we don't dwell on what's bad, we reverse engineer it and we fix it, and anything is possible. And no, I'm not going to minimize your budget for that. No, we're not going to play by the rules. No, there isn't a concrete handbook here. Nothing in life is in black and white. There's no linear life. We're going to fix this. Where at other, I don't know, I guess I call them, listen, I give every shelter love, but there are corporate structured shelters out there, which as long as I'm alive, DDR will never be. Yeah, one day I'm going to die. DDR is going to have to evolve. As long as I'm there, we don't play 100% by any handbook because the world evolves every day, and so should. My lawyer doesn't love that answer, but we don't necessarily play. But wherever the ball is thrown at us, we're going to hit it, and whatever we have to do that, we'll figure it out. And until I get sued really bad for my lawyer drops me, I'm going to keep living by that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you're such an example to so many other people, no matter what they're doing. Maybe they're not even in animal rescue, but you're such an example. And that's such a lesson in life too, right? We don't have to follow the path that we think is laid before us. We just have to take it one day at a time and, re-engineer it.
And that's hard because I think our brains are, there's a psychology in it. Like, we're naturally wired. We want to please our parents and our family and like stay within those lines. And again, going back to the way I grew up, I can sit here now and be like, I am so thankful I don't have parents to please. Like, there is no mom calling my phone like, I can't believe you just did this, and so I'm allowed to like live outside of the box, and that comes with its own challenges. But I think going forward, and even the way, I have 2 young girls, 10 and 5, and even the way we've started raising girls is so different from how I was born in the 80s, how we're being raised, and definitely how our mother's generation was being raised. The rules, again, they're fluid, and we are learning we can do whatever we want and make it work. There are limits, of course, but I love that lesson, and I love my 10-year-old daughter is all about DDR, and she comes to work with me sometimes, and she sees like there's rules, but there's also ways to get around them. And she even sees that, fortunately or unfortunately, when I have meetings with her school. But it's these strong women setting the example of, you can be a CEO, you can be a mom, you can be a community advocate. The rules are, you can have your marriage however you want it. I love tradition, but they're creating something new, and creating new traditions is so great too for us women. Yeah. And that's what, if this touches you, like, we want all the badass women at Detroit Dog Rescue. There's so many ways to help. And I know a lot of us women, I get it. I don't have an extra second in my day right now. I have, Macomb Foster Closet, God bless them. They called me this morning, can you help us? And I'm like trying to get that last minute phone call in. And there's so many ways you can help within your business. The aesthetic method is a great example. Like, I don't mean to give them a shout out.
Stephanie, love those girls.
I'm
yeah.
getting them a shout out on your podcast. I'm sorry, I'll pay for the
No,
marketing.
I love them so much.
Man, she does as simple as Wag Wednesdays, where she shows a dog on the aesthetic methods, Instagram. That's huge. People ask me all the time, what can I do? I don't go straight to like, donate all your money, volunteer all your time. I go to like, share a dog story on our social media pages.
Yeah.
Please, 2 seconds. Like, that's all. And if you feel after that you have the time or funds or whatever, but like, tell somebody, that's huge.
Yeah, I love that you gave a shout out to Stephanie and her whole team, because I love following everything that they do. And you can use your business. You don't necessarily have to start a new organization or do some big fundraiser, right? Like, I do love, and I'm sure you do too, when people use their birthday as an opportunity to fundraise for a nonprofit that they love. But even just sharing posts on social media, 100%. If you see something that DDR posted, or a dog story that like touches your heart, or, you never know who might see it, and who might be able to actually help, whether it's fostering a dog or volunteering, or right now I know you're hiring. So like, share that post.
And it all comes full circle. Like, before we were talking about when you do the right thing, hey, I have a background in marketing. The biggest way to boost your business is like helping the community. Mm-hmm. That is huge. People want brands and businesses that they can trust, that they feel have invested in them. So, sharing something, showing that you help the community with a share is huge. Nakashire Orthodontics, again, like, owned by a woman. Her team is always collecting towels, blankets. My daughter has braces. She just put braces on me because she's like, we're going to fix your smile for a DDR. So like, that kind of thing, people trust that, and people go in there and they're like, oh, I want to come here because I know you did that towel collection for Detroit Dog Rescue. So it's not going out of your element to give your time all the time, or to donate more than you can afford, or whatever. It's just genuinely make it a part of your routine in your life. Stephanie's a great example.
Yeah.
She's a very good human.
Yeah, love that girl. Watch In Tandem on One Girl Revolution's website or on our YouTube page. In Tandem is the inspiring story of Caitlin Cullen and her restaurant in Milwaukee, The Tandem. The Tandem does more than just serve food. The Tandem is a family, a community of support for everyone. The Tandem hires people that often no one else will hire, gives them an opportunity, trains them, and helps them find their way in this world. The Tandem is a support system for everyone who walks through their doors. But when COVID hit in March 2020, the Tandem story became even more inspiring. The Tandem closed their doors to customers and began solely feeding people in need during a time when so many people were struggling. Caitlin and the Tandem community fed over 115,000 people during the first year of the pandemic. Absolutely incredible. Watch and share in Tandem today on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. Where does Detroit Dog Rescue go from here? This is a podcast all about dreams, big dreams, girl. So
I haven't shared this with anybody.
What
yet.
do you, where do you go from here, and what's your hopes and dreams for Detroit Dog Rescue?
So we don't have a marketing campaign to share this yet, and I haven't really talked about it with anybody, and people are going to go crazy, but I feel like this is a good platform. So talk about breaking the rules. Detroit Dog Rescue has, we have our no-kill shelter on the west side.
Right.
Which left our east side shelter open, our little 2,000 square feet that we started off with, built in 1949. And the Bissell Pet Foundation, Tito's Vodka, they are helping us make that a spay and neuter clinic for the city of Detroit. So we'll be doing free spay and neuters, pet pantry, all of that stuff out of there. So that is actually, they're building that right this second. We were there this morning. Pigs, the pig that we talked about. And if you edit this out, you can go to my Instagram and check out who Pigs is. Pigs inspired something in me and my daughter's love of horses, that I love the dogs in Detroit. I love our Detroit shelter, but the dogs need more. Dogs need a place to run. They need a place to sniff. They need a place to roll. They need to do all of the things. It's really hard to do that in a concrete jungle. Mm-hmm. And, getting 50 acres right now in the city of Detroit, it's pretty tough. Mm-hmm. And even when we were looking to build a shelter, everybody, because we're a car city, right? Every lot was environmentally just not sound or conducive to building a dog shelter. And you'd have to lay down a lot of cement. I want a place with a lot of grass and lavender and a pond and all the places. So pigs came into our life last June. And we really just started caring for pigs and loved being out in the elements. And we started bringing dogs to where Pigs is. And we started training dogs. And we noticed that they were less stressed. So they were training quicker. And getting them out of the shelter was really helping them. So my husband and I right now are working on a farm project possibly for Detroit dogs. But you got to follow my Instagram and DDR's Instagram to know more. But will there be a Detroit farm? What's it going to be called? Is Pigs going to stay there? How many dogs are going to be there? Can you bring your dog to a training class at this Detroit farm? All of that's going to be answered this year. But if you've ever had a dream of having rescue dogs at a farm, we might be able to help you fulfill that.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait.
No, I haven't told anyone that. It's never you. It's my husband and I and our board have been sworn to secrecy. So now my lawyer's
no. That is so awesome. And it just shows the need for what you're doing, but also you can always grow and expand. And also I know that the work that you guys are doing is also having an impact on our culture too. I believe that. And changing the way people think about animals and think about dogs, and also getting more involved. Everybody can do something for these animals.
It's huge that you say that. And, we talk about people not understanding how to treat a dog. When I see the big German Shepherd that's at my daughter's, where she rides horses, he is dirty, matted, loving life, never wants to come in the house. He runs that whole farm. If that were happening here at a house in Detroit, we would call that animal abuse. But he is having a blast. He just went to the vet. He's super healthy. That's all he wants to do. He's allowed to come in the breezeway of the house, and he doesn't want to go in there. He wants to stay out by the barn, play in the mud. Dogs want to roll, sniff, all of those things. And we talk about people being evil, and we talk about them being monsters. But I've had to watch dog fighting videos as live evidence, and I'll never forget, in so many of those videos, it's somebody's uncle, somebody's father holding a 3-year-old little boy, watching a dog fight. So where you and I, or somebody, maybe not so much me with my mom, but we grew up going shopping with our moms, and this is what we do. They grew up seeing dog fighting, cockfighting. This is what some people know, and it's the same way in other countries. So creating this new way of how we show kids how to treat animals. I love when we're doing outreach and we're like stuffing a doghouse and the kids come out like, what are you doing? And I have like photos of me stuffing a doghouse with them and all of the things. But you can't knock people for what they weren't shown. And I know people will listen to this and be like, you suck, you're giving them too much credit. Dogs can't, stick up for themselves. They can't defend for themselves. And in a way, people can't defend themselves either if that's all they know. So I just think inclusiveness, kindness. And then if you show me that you're still just, I can't say this word, then, that's a whole nother story.
But that's such an important thing. And that's one of the things that I've gotten out of this conversation too, is that we can't necessarily judge what we see,
100%.
Find out, dig into what's actually going on and try to be the help or the change that you want to see in the world. And
I love that I've been here long enough to see, one thing I didn't mention is my father's side of the family has been in Detroit for over 100 years.
Wow.
However, they were the most notorious crime family in the city of Detroit, killing, murdering, robbing. They were part of the Detroit Purple Gang. So if you look up my maiden name, Millman, and you look up Purple Gang, all of the Detroit news covers will come up of the horrible things they did in Detroit. So my whole entire life, have been very familiar with Detroit. I love that I have seen it go through so many changes. And, in the last 7 years, I'm seeing, what they're calling new Detroit, and people coming from all over Michigan, all over the country. However, not necessarily knowing or being immersed in Detroit culture. I have people who, rightfully so, call me sometimes about people who they think are homeless or maybe homeless, who have a dog and that dog's abused. And I will tell you, some people who are experiencing homeless here in Detroit treat their dogs so incredibly well. I know that's hard to understand. But sometimes I think if new Detroit could come to my shelter and we could all have a conversation, kind of like what we just talked about, of you don't know everyone's situation because we've never been through it, right? It's so important to see Detroit is becoming very much like where I grew up in Southfield, once again, as it used to be, a melting pot of culture, right? Everybody is here now, and to understand each other, that's going to take some crucial conversations. And I hope animals are the catalyst to that. Detroit Dog Rescue will always be the campus if anyone wants to have that conversation. But to get to know how people think or feel or act through animals is really special. And I always say, if we could all bring our food from our culture and sit down at one big table and have these conversations, we would learn so much. We would learn why your dog's outside. We would learn why your cat's outside. We will learn why you feel like, I always say, if you dropped a lion off in my backyard, I would have no idea what to feed it. And that's very much how, when pigs came to me, I had to, call pig people and be like, this thing is yelling at me. I was so scared of pigs. And they were like, oh, no, that's his happy snort. I'm like, I guess. So, and I will tell you, most of the people in Detroit who have dogs, and you're like, oh, you went out and I see this in the comments. You went out and got a dog just to treat it like shit. I see that in the comments all the time. These were stray dogs where actually the person was doing something nice and leaving them food or whatever on that porch. That dog never left. A lot of Detroiters did not ask for the dogs that they have. I'm not giving them a pass. Trust me, I see in backyards all the time, 6 dogs chained up to, trees, that those people went out and got those dogs. But that's why the conversations are important.
Yes.
And who knows? Maybe this summer we're going to bring One Girl Revolution. We're going to have a whole freaking conversation thing. And I think it'd be good just to have the conversation so people can understand.
Yeah. Well, that's where we're headed with One Girl Revolution. We want to do more of that,
it.
Bringing people together for conversations. Kristina, if you could get to the very root of why you do what you do every single day, I know some of it's you're fueled by these joyous occasions when you see an animal get placed with an amazing family, or you see Chase, climbing Mount Everest. I don't know that he's done that, but something like that. But I know that those things,
he was like, I'll climb this for one snackle. He's good.
Those things can be, obviously fuel what you're doing and get you really excited. But I know you're also dealing with difficult times. If you could get to the very root of why you do what you do, maybe it's your own story, maybe it's your own life, maybe it's your daughters, your family. What would you say that root is?
There is no doubt now, after everything I've gone through, therapy, spiritual conversations I've had with different leaders, and the peace that I have now. There's no doubt that my life is the way that it is to do what I'm doing today. The fact that I'm able to rescue dogs, but also have a heavy focus on people and understand people. I've been in every tax bracket. I've slept on a foam mattress. I've had a beautiful bedroom. I like to keep it in between. There's no doubt that I'm doing what I was meant to do. I hate that I had to go through physical abuse, sexual abuse, violence and mental abuse, all of that. I hate it. But looking back at 41, sounds crazy to some people. I'm so grateful because I can connect on such a level with so many people who need help, so many animals who need help. So there's no doubt I want to quit at least once a week. I do. I missed, I know one day my 10-year-old daughter and I are going to have a big conversation because I wasn't home much between the ages for her of 1 and 5. And yeah, I regret that. But I see her compassion for people and what she saw. And there's no doubt that everything I've given up will be worth it. That's what keeps me going is I don't know, honestly, what I'll be doing in 20 years. Kelly Rowe at Fox 2 said, when are you going to run for office? And it's like, I don't know what's next, but whatever God has, I know it's going to be something good. And right now, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I think a lot of people feel that way about their purpose. Maybe they can't articulate it. I've never been happier in my life than I am at this very moment. And you look at any dog and you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but I'm super duper lucky that everything in my life turned out the way that it did. Everything.
Well, you are such a beacon of light, and I encourage everybody to follow you on social media.
Thanks.
People can obviously support you by following, sharing, like we said before. What are other ways that people can get involved and support Detroit Dog Rescue?
Okay, so 2 things. Go to DetroitDogRescue.com. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook under the same thing. Our Instagram can only post so many things per day. So we've started spilling over onto my Instagram. It's Kristina Detroit. Kristina with a K, Kristina, Detroit on Instagram. So you'll see stories both on my page and DDR's page. We try to do reels for every dog story so you can understand where they're coming from. But above that, if you want to foster, that's huge. Not everybody can foster. If you want to donate, that's great. If you want to facilitate a gene day at your office, if you're still going into an office, if you can share our social media reels and stories, that's one of the biggest things you can do. You want to do a work volunteer day. You want to just comment. And, it's sometimes the littlest, what people would say are the littlest things have the most impact. Somebody shared my stuff, and then Jonathan Holtzman, who built the panda exhibit at the zoo, was like, what do you need? I'll put a vet room in your shelter for you. And I was like, why, thank you. So wow. The impact that social media has is huge. But the biggest thing you can do is, especially if you're in the Detroit area, be kind, have hard conversations, keep following Detroit Dog Rescue, and hopefully that motivates you to do that, and you'll think of this podcast. But everybody can do something, and if you're searching for ways to get your kids involved, email me. I'm on the website, all of those things. There's always a way to get involved.
I will put all of the links to your social media, all the social media links, your website, everything, and all the ways that people can get involved in the show notes. So it'll be really easy for people to get in touch with you and support you. Thank you. Before I let you go, I always end this podcast on 2 questions. So I'm having you on this podcast because you are a one girl revolution. You're changing the world every single day through your life. Who is a one girl revolution in your life? Who's a woman or girl that inspires you?
Oh, that's such a good question because I could list 500. Janet Pepler, our board president, I went to her when Detroit Dog Rescue had nothing and was bankrupt. And I said, everybody was telling me close it down. We had 18 dogs. I was just taking over as executive director. We had a founder who bankrupted us pretty bad. And I told her, this is my vision. And everyone was like, you are crazy. And I said, I need to keep the Detroit Dog Rescue name, please. She backed me and believed, like, without question. And what she has built in her own business, the Pepler Agency, is just incredible. And to have somebody of that status believe in me, back me, constantly tell me I can do it. The times, I mean, I've been close to giving up, and she was like, no, you're not. Let's go. Let's go. So much credit goes to her behind the scenes work for sure. Another person there's two people I'm wildly, you talk about a revolution. There's a therapist out there. I know now she's dealing with a lot of couples. Susie came in. I met her randomly on a podcast, and I was like, you know what? I've been thinking about doing therapy. I'm going to do it with her. She's an incredible therapist with a lot of insight. You know, you talk about a revolution and change. And everything that I display today about, you know, I'm always telling people, don't get furious, get curious, have those hard conversations. She has been a catalyst for that. Michelle Klein, just another therapist and wonderful human being in my life right now, who is, you know, the same thing on that level of revolutionizing things for women and families to have hard conversations, and neighbors too. If you're not bringing in your mail, she'll so just great women like that. And I think when we think like strong women, they always have to be the biggest women in the news, the ones with the most Instagram followers, the prettiest, or like, you would be surprised by how many women that you never hear from are creating a revolution in their circle that's creating a hurricane for the future. So it's awesome to be here, and I'm honored, obviously. But man, there's so many women. I think every woman is their own revolution.
They are. Yeah. We're firm believers in that. And that's what I love about that question on this podcast, is because some people, you know, they'll mention Oprah, or like you said, some of the like,
Oprah, if you are out there and
if you're listening, we love
upload some money for tax season. It's Oprah.
But people like that, but it's the women in our everyday circles, in our everyday lives, that are really changing the world. And then I think what's so interesting, and you're an example of this, is also women have this special capability to not only change their own lives or their own path, but affect generations and generations to come. And I'm thinking about your little girls and their children and their children's children. And you look at history, and women just have this innate power to really transform the world through their lives for generations and generations to come.
So true. You know, and podcasts like this, it's really showing it. I love this podcast, and I was drawn to it because when you know, there's lots of podcasts out there. How to cook, and let me interview this small business and all that. Like, when you ask the hard questions and get down, like, what was your life really like? And why when you get to people's why, that's a whole nother level. And that's why people love the Oprahs and the whoever else does that. I don't like surface conversation.
Yeah.
I love stuff like this. Yeah. And this is how people change the world. So you are on my revolution.
I'm trying to be like you, actually.
I could never do this whole thing.
Well, Kristina, thank you so much for being on the podcast. The last question that I always end this podcast on, because we focus on women and girls, my question for you is, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
One message. There's no such thing as a linear life. That's it. I think we're taught from the minute we're born is you got to figure out how your life's going to go. In third grade, they start asking us what we want to be when we grow up, or they start telling us what we should be when we grow up. And the second there's a bump in the road, we think that's the end of our life, especially women. And we get extremely insecure. There's no such thing as a linear life. Yeah, that's it.
I love it.
Do your thing.
I love it. Well, you are such an example of that. And I'm so grateful to you, Kristina, for being on. And thank you so much for being on. And thank you so much for all the incredible work that you do.
Thank you for inspiring what feels like the world. I mean, really, thank you for sharing stories. That's not an easy task. And thank you for sharing mine.
Oh, thanks, Kristina. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.